I grew up with Porsche posters on the wall. Not Ferrari, not Lamborghini, Porsche. There was something about that shape, that silhouette, that just stuck with me as a kid. And I know I'm not alone in that, because here's the thing, Porsche is one of the strangest success stories in the car world. When you really sit down and think about it, it doesn't fully make sense on paper. Ferrari is louder, Lamborghini is more dramatic, McLaren will destroy it on a racetrack, and yet millions of people around the world dream about owning a Porsche. Some owners keep theirs for decades, others clock over 1 million kilometers on them, and somehow a car whose basic design is over 60 years old is still one of the most desirable sports cars on the planet. So what is Porsche actually doing differently? Why do people become so genuinely attached to this brand? And why does a Porsche feel special even to someone who couldn't tell you anything about horsepower or lap times? I think the answer goes much deeper than the car itself. Number 1. A timeless design. Let's start with the obvious one, the 911. Most cars get completely reinvented every few years. A 1995 Honda Civic looks nothing like a 2025 Honda Civic, but Porsche took a completely different road. Put a 1964 911 next to a modern one. They're clearly different cars, but they're also clearly family. The round headlights, that sloping roofline, the wide rear haunches, the DNA never left. Now, there are definitely people who've criticized Porsche for this. They never change. It looks like a frog. And honestly, I get it. But for most people, whether they're hardcore petrol heads or someone who just appreciates a beautiful car driving past, there's something about that shape that just works. And there's real psychology behind why this matters so much. Researchers have found that people are far more likely to develop emotional attachment to products with design consistency over time. It creates familiarity. It creates trust. You're not just buying a car, you're buying into something that's been around longer than you have. Compare that to most car brands, where a model gets completely redesigned every 5 to 10 years and looks nothing like its predecessor. That visual thread gets cut. But with Porsche, a 911 from the 1970s and one from today feel like they belong to the same family, and that's intentional. There's also the fact that Porsche leans heavily into organic, curved shapes, and if you know anything about how we respond to design, our brains associate curves with nature, with comfort, with flow. It's a softer, more timeless language than hard angles and aggression. And because that language has stayed consistent for decades, Porsches have become instantly recognizable. You don't need to see the badge. You already know what it is. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect. The more we see something, the more we like it. Porsche has been showing the world the same silhouette, generation after generation. So when someone says they've wanted a Porsche since they were a kid, that's not just a coincidence. That's years of consistent design, quietly doing its job. Number 2, the daily driver. Here's where things get really interesting, because this is where Porsche separates itself from nearly every other performance brand. Most dream cars have a fundamental problem. They're kind of terrible at being actual cars. A Lamborghini is an incredible piece of engineering, genuinely, but try to take it through morning traffic, squeeze it into a parking spot, or go over a speed bump without holding your breath. It starts to fall apart as a daily experience. And that's because most supercars are designed to feel special, which also makes them completely impractical. Porsche took the opposite approach. They positioned themselves as the everyday supercar. And yes, models like the Cayenne, the Macan, the Panamera, those are obviously built for real life, but even a 911, their most iconic car, is something you could realistically drive every single day. Take it for a spirited run on the weekend. Cruise comfortably through city streets on Monday. It's got storage. It's got good visibility. It even has back seats though, admittedly. Those are better suited to people who are not adult-shaped. And this practicality matters more than people realize, because there's a huge difference between a car you admire from a distance and a car that becomes part of your actual life. If you only take your supercar out twice a year, it stays a novelty. But if you drive your Porsche every day, to work, to the shops, on road trips, it becomes part of you, part of your story. Porsche has also mastered what you might call versatility signaling by building a car that works across completely different contexts. A track day, a business meeting, a weekend away. They're essentially saying this car fits into your life, whatever that life looks like. And that's an incredibly powerful thing for a brand to communicate. You can see it in old Porsche listings online. These cars all have stories, long ones, because they were genuinely lived in, not locked away. Number 3, the attainable dream. And this might be the most important piece of the puzzle. Porsches are not cheap. Let's be honest about that. But they're also not in another universe, and that distinction is everything. Unlike something like a Ferrari or a Koenigsegg, which for the vast majority of people will never be anything more than a poster, Porsche sits in a genuinely different position. It's expensive, but it doesn't feel impossible. A Cayenne or a Macan lands in similar territory to a loaded BMW or Mercedes. Entry-level 911s, while still serious money, feel like something you can actually plan for, save for, work towards, and that changes the emotional relationship that people have with a brand entirely. When a dream feels completely out of reach, it stops motivating you. But when a dream feels difficult but achievable, it becomes a goal. And goals create a totally different kind of investment. You start researching, you start watching videos, you start noticing every Porsche on the road. That's how obsessions are born. There's also the used market to consider. Because Porsche has been building great cars for so long, there's a huge range of options at different price points. You can get the full Porsche experience, the heritage, the driving feel, that crest on the bonnet, without buying the newest car in the showroom. An older 911, a first-gen Cayenne, a 944 with some stories to tell, they're all still Porsches, and that keeps the brand accessible while somehow maintaining its sense of exclusivity. So why do people love Porsche so much? It's not because they're the loudest or the fastest or the most outrageous thing on the road. It's because Porsche understands something that a lot of car brands seem to forget. Great cars aren't just machines. They're experiences, they're relationships, they're part of the stories we tell about our own lives. Porsche built a brand around all three of those things, through decades of consistent design that people grew up with, through cars that are actually used and loved and lived in, and through a price positioning that keeps the dream alive for millions of people who aren't billionaires. And maybe that's Porsche's greatest achievement, not building the fastest sports car, not building the most dramatic one, but building a car that people never stop wanting. If you've ever dreamed about owning one, you're definitely not alone. I've been there since I was a kid staring at a poster on the wall. See you in the next one. Cheers.